All right, we're going to open the spring forum. The Winthrop Town Charter states that the council is supposed to hold a forum in the fall for goods and services and a forum in the spring for finance. So now we're going to have the town manager make the presentation for the fiscal 26 budget and go over some key contributors to that budget. So again, we thank you for being here. We thank the department heads for being here and for all you do day in and day out to make this town run as smoothly as possible. Your work is greatly appreciated by the council as well as the citizens. So without further ado, Tony Marino.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming. This has been a little different of a budget year this year as we kicked off, obviously waiting for the April 5th election for the overrides. We normally are a little further along in union negotiations as we've got 5 union contracts that are coming up in June 30th. But again, without knowing, where we stood with school funding and what we were going to need, we've been sort of going at a turtle's pace. But we certainly picked up now. We're ready to roll. Again, thank you. I said it the other night, and I'll say it again, and it's been said 100 times tonight, but thank you to the community. I mean, it was certainly a team effort, and the community really rallied around not only the debt exclusion, but the override questions, and we thank you for that, and we promise to be good stewards with the money we brought, and especially with the firehouse construction. I'm excited to get to build another building, and we're going to do a great job on it. I can promise you that. First slide, please. Thanks. We start this off with the capital plan. We do a lot of work with the Economic Development and Capital Assets Committee. We do a 5-year plan that we update every year. We've been doing this the last 3 years. This one is still in a little bit of limbo. We've got it in here. We're still going to fine tune it a little bit. So for those who got paper books, we'll be giving you some new inserts as we finish it up and just fine tune the funding sources. We've been working diligently with the schools to wrap up their needs, what can be done in the maintenance budget, what they need for capital. So that's all going to get done this week, and we'll have that wrapped up. And as always, this capital plan, I should have said that in the beginning, the capital plan is in the budget doc, and the budget document will always be available on the website. It's a PDF format. You can download it. You can have access to it 24/7. And the version on there, regardless of inserts and paper budget books, that'll always be up to date in the most recent version. And before I get too far along, I just want to reach out and say thanks to Larissa, works in my office. She does this, puts this PDF together, works diligently printing, and it's a little printing press in there for the week leading up to it, so I couldn't do it without her. So thank you for all your hard work on that, Larissa. Big little round of applause, please. So I'll just run through the capital plan. I won't get into too many details. It's in there. It's on the website, and it's in the paper books. But this is the format that it's in. We start with the 5-year project request is the first line. Obviously, description and project titles. FY26 is the year we're coming up on, and obviously we can't do everything, right? So we have a town manager recommended line item, which we prioritize with department heads, the schools, and others, and then we recommend what we think we can afford for any given fiscal year. And then we lay out the remaining 4 years after that. And then the last column identifies the funding source. GF is general fund. We got a great project going on at the library with some accessibility grants that we got. So that's a grant through the state of Mass. And we're working diligently on that. And then, and so on and so forth. Next slide, please. This is just a lot on this one. This is... we listed what the Capital Assets Committee really wanted, and not all of them are listed in the funding for this year and future years, but we wanted to list all the projects that we had going on. We've got a lot of climate resiliency projects. We've got some stormwater projects on, Tyleston and Girdlestone and things like that. Morton Street and Banks, flooding, and things we're doing to work on that. We wanted to layer them all in there. Council President recently asked me, we've got stuff coming up on the rink. We want to do the locker rooms. We want to put that in here. We're going to have to do some work on the gym, right, eventually, so we want to layer that in there and put in what we think that's going to cost. We've also got, in our commitment to planting trees and increasing the tree canopy, we've got $25,000 again in this budget that we're recommending to plant trees in the spring and the fall like we've been doing the last few years. A lot of this water and sewer gets funded out of the Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund. These are projects that, Director Caller and I talk about, and he brings them forward. A lot of them are right out of the report that Woodard and Curran did. And we looked to fund a lot of these last year with meter replacements and valve exercising and, doing some engineering for water main work. And then we'll start to move forward with construction. Park and Rec's got a few projects in here. The WF on the side there is Winthrop Foundation. We've asked for one of them that got approved already. We'll be going back to ask for a play structure. And then we've got, obviously, the big one there that's coming up that we continue to talk about is we'll have to redo the turf field at Miller Field, and, we estimate that'll be around $900,000, so we'll have to, working hard to make a plan and have to fund that in the future. Next slide, please. This is what I talked about with the schools. School superintendent and I have been working hard on this to, figure out what the school's needs are, what can be done, maintenance, what's gonna be done right away, prioritizing these projects, and we're still fine-tuning this, so this will get tweaked a little bit. Next slide, please. And then this is what I talked about. This is sort of the summary of all of it. You look at that 5-year project request, and you got that, big scary number at the bottom with the $116 million, but I mean, that's the reality. I mean, part of that is the $38 million for the fire station and, all these projects, but a lot of this stuff's going to be expensive, and we're certainly going to have to be able to find grants and other funding sources to do it, because it won't all be able to be done by the taxpayers. So we're going to continue to work hard on that to make sure we find those funding sources and, get as much outside funding as we can. And then down the bottom, which is what we're still fine-tuning, the funding sources for FY26, capital stabilization, green communities, free cash, debt exclusions, state tip grant, water and sewer enterprise funds, waterways funds, and then the Winthrop Foundation. So we'll have some more accurate numbers in there, over the next week or so. Next slide, please. Talked a little bit about the budget process. We started working, probably 3 months ago now with the department heads. As I said, this year it's been a little slower, certainly warning everybody that, if we're not to get the overrides, the budget will look different. While we couldn't fund all of the school's needs, there would be certainly something we'd have to fund to, so they could meet their minimum requirements, and also keeping in mind that we've got minimum requirements with regard to, public safety, DPW, police, fire, et cetera, that have to be met. So we couldn't cut too much there, because we do have state minimums and life safety issues that we have to deal with. We'll present the base budget tonight. Obviously, Lisa Howard presented it last night to the school committee. We'll present it tonight. That's the budget document that, does the percentage base that we've been doing the last 3 years. A little higher this year with the extra $3.5 million that's in there now. So that's, school percentage is actually 60%, a little higher than that. And then the town's a little less, 39 and change. This budget is in the, we call it the GFOA format, which stands for Government Finance Officers Association format. It's really well respected in the industry. It gives the department heads a chance to really showcase their departments with, their mission statement, their goals and accomplishments, things they want to do, new initiatives that they want to bring forward, and it gives them a chance to shine and showcase that as we go through with the Finance Commission. The draft budget was presented tomorrow night. We actually presented last week. This was a little early, but we'll present again to Finance tomorrow night, the Finance Commission. Final proposed budget will be presented to the Town Council on May 27th, and we're shooting to have that report by the Finance Commission to them by then. So then they can, first couple of meetings in June, the council can discuss the budget, discuss the capital plan, and hopefully get ready to approve it in that second meeting in June of this 2025. Next slide, please. And I'm going to pass this off to our Finance Director, Sarah Johnson, as this is, she created this document. She's going to walk you through it.
Good evening, everyone. The base budget calculation basically starts at the top with last year's budgets. So we had, the schools had $36,141,803, town had $25,283,211. Total that we actually, budgets general fund was $61,425,014. That also equals all the revenues. So when we start the budgeting process for FY26, we always start looking at revenues first, because you want to base your expenditures to the revenues. So first thing we look at is the levy, which is in blue and that orange. The little white numbers next to it are the actuals for FY25. We had a levy of $34,449,222. We had $861,231 in Prop 2.5. I think everybody knows about Prop 2.5. You get automatically 2.5% of your levy, and then that gets added to your next year. So that's the 861, and we had 407,585 in new growth last year. So for looking forward to FY26, we're going to have a levy of $35,718,037. Your Prop 2.5 of that is $892,951, and we're estimating less new growth in FY26, $350,000. And that's because the assessors were wonderful. Thank you very much, the assessors, because they were going back and they were capturing some of the old new growth that hadn't been captured previously in building permits. So they have now captured all of that revenue. So we're not going to be getting quite as much in 26 as we had in 25 and 24. So, and then in that nice orange stripe, had the successful passing of the school override for $3.5 million. So our estimated total levy is $40,460,988. And if you look at the first yellow line under FY26 school and town, it says a portion additional FY26 revenue. And that's $1.8 million. And that's pretty much your additional Prop 2.5 and your new growth, and then other additions of like local receipts and things. And so then we have an offset revenue. We're having a little, our indirect costs only increased by $34.48. And then we back off the prior year's debt exclusions. And so, because those only, I equate it to like a mortgage, like the principal and interest payments that you had for the prior year. And so those are different because it costs a little bit less in 26 than it is in 25 for the school debt. So therefore, the levy's only going to go up by the actual principal and interest payments. So the school's debt exclusions went from $2.8 million to $2.4 million, and the town's only went up by $500, $809,400 to $809,900. And then you see the school override. The only other item on here was last year, the schools got $220,000 in free cash, and that's a one-time fund. So that's not revenue like the levy and the local receipts that come in every year. So that was backed off of the school budget from last year. So basically, the FY26 total base budget is going to be $40,158,42 to the schools, $26,254,540 for the town. Next slide, please. So then, all the other additions to the budget besides levy, as far as revenue, the state gives us money. We get state aid. So you get your Chapter 70 education money. The town gets unrestricted government general aid, which is UGA. And all of our aid from the state came to $15,924,957. We back off the charges because the state giveth and the state taketh away. So things like the MBTA, they charge us for those services. So there's a bunch of charges that the state backs off the revenue that they give you. And then there's also offsets. The library has an offset for $48,732. So our net revenue from the state is $14,567,431. We also have local receipts. That's another form of revenue to the town. The local receipts, the largest local receipt is motor vehicle excise tax. So when you all are paying for your car excise tax, that goes directly to the town. Another source of local revenue that's a little bit less than the motor vehicle excise, but it's still substantial, are the pilot payments that we get from the airport and then also from the MWRA. So the local receipts are $7,575,000. Speaking of the assessors, there's something called an allowance for abatements. So if you don't agree with the way that the assessors have assessed your property, you can apply for an abatement. And so when that is done, the town has to have a pot of money available to be able to give you that abatement. So we're raising $225,000 for that. The other category is just some direct offsets to the town. We have cemetery lots, cemetery perpetual care, a maintenance stabilization fund, the regional 911, and then the indirect costs to the town come from the enterprise funds for the services of all of our departments or the specific departments that help them. So in the finance department, we're paying their bills, we're paying their payroll, treasurer is taking in payments. So there's a lot of different offices that also we like bill basically to the enterprise funds, and we get money from them. So the total revenue coming in, you can see in that bottom total, you've got your levy, your debt service, the cherry sheets from the state aid, estimated receipts, other revenue, and then the total revenue comes down to $66,405,382. And, next slide, we're gonna spend that $66,405,382. So on the very far column, Town Manager's Budget in FY '26, we've sorted out summarizing general government, public safety, vocational education, DPW, Culture and Human Services, total non-departmental, and the total for the town is $26,254,540, which if you remember back on that first slide, that was the allotment to the town. And then for the schools, they get their share, $40,158,422, and the total operating costs equal the same amount as the revenue, $66,405,382. Next slide. So, as Tony mentioned, we have the GFOA budget format in the budget books that the council gets and also the Finance Commission. It promotes the best practices in public budgeting. It basically tries to give all of the information that we have. It's also on our website, so the public has the information. It's very transparent. It's accountable. It shows you where every department budgets all of their money. It also shows you the types of activities that they do. There's data involved. It's very interesting. I mean, you can look at the fire department and all the calls they go on. Same thing for police. I mean, it has crime data. It has a ton of information in this budget document. The department narratives are in there. It talks about all the department heads put in information about the type of work that they're doing, their mission statement, their goals and objectives, their accomplishments from the prior year. And it really isn't an easy to digest format, and it gives a great snapshot of the town's financials. Thank you. And this is basically a little quick snapshot. We chose the first department, Town Council, and it basically shows you what the format looks like in the budget document. You've got your personnel costs, if there's any overtime, and then a subtotal of all the personnel costs. And we're showing you what was budgeted in '24, what was actually spent in FY '24, what was budgeted in '25, and then I put in all the expenses from December 31st, so that you have a half a year of expenses. And then underneath all the personnel are all the other expenses. So this format is the same for every department. So you've got all your personnel up front, you've got all your expenses down below, and some departments may have capital, so there's a third little section for capital. And that's all available in the budget document. And if there's any questions, we'll pass it back to Mr. Molina.
Thank you, Sarah. Great job. Before we get into questions, I just want to talk about some of the challenges we've had this year. You know, obviously the largest one for us is health insurance. You know, we went up last year. We've been averaging, you know, prior to last year, you know, anywhere from 5 to 7% increases with the GIC. Last year, that number jumped up to almost 10%. It was like 9.96 or something like that. This year, it was even more drastic. It was up around, you know, when you do so each individual plan goes up a certain percentage, the highest being 17%. I think Harvard Pilgrim was the lowest, around 11. But now we have a blended mix, right? We have a different plans. People pick different plans. So our mix, we ended up increasing about 15.3%. Certainly, you know, 5.3 more than last year, which hurt. You know, we had big numbers for health insurance last year. We're going to be looking at all sorts of ways to, you know, our contract with GIC is coming up, you know, in a year or so. So we're going to be looking at, you know, what other options are out there. We'll be talking to the GIC about plan mix, you know, maybe talking to the unions. There's an insurance committee that we put together with all the heads of the different unions. We can talk about, you know, plan mix. We can talk about percentages. You know, one of the things we're talking about is, you know, maybe as we move forward with the new hires, that we change the split. Currently, we're at 85-15, where the town pays 85%, the employee pays 15%. Possibly moving, a lot of towns have done this for new hires, moving forward as of a certain date, it's 75-25. You know, and then through attrition, you'll get to a lower rate, make it a little more affordable. You know, and then maybe there's different plan mixes with, you know, less co-pays and other things that the employees might want too as well. So we are going to look at ways to try to get that number down, try to get creative. It's not just here, it's everywhere. There's another big insurance company out there, Maya, that does our property and casualty insurance. They offer health insurance plans. I had that in a prior town. They went up 18% this year. You know, so it's, you know, we're not even saving anything by looking out at that. I know Revere and Chelsea, I talk a lot with them, with the mayor and the city manager over there, and they're self-insured, similar rates, 15, 16, 17% increases. So it's across the board. It's the increasing costs to run the hospitals. Those costs get passed off to the insurance companies, and that's where we stand. This year's budget, obviously, we really held the line with our stuff, knowing that the schools needed the money. Obviously, the towns, year after year, we get strapped with it. We have a little bit more flexibility on the town side, but again, with the union contracts not being settled, one of the things that's not in the budget books is the staffing sheets. We don't have other than the fire contract, the other contracts aren't settled yet, so when we do the staffing sheets, we've got to put in the numbers that we currently sit at, because we don't know what FY26 is going to be yet. So we're going to hopefully get a little more traction now that the budget's settled and we know what our number is and how much wiggle room we have to work with. So capital obviously is a big one I talked about earlier. One of the things we did, Drew, is, as the Finance Commission has asked us to do, we did drop trash down a little bit more. As we were certifying free cash this year, one of the challenges were we got a little pushback from DOR that we didn't have enough in retained earnings, and, we needed to increase the revenue on the trash fund. So, one of the things, we'll take a look at that this year. We're gonna try to keep that to a minimum, if at all, but, that's one of the things we're looking at this year. So, as we get ready to, bring the water rates forward, we'll probably be talking about solid waste as well. That certainly won't make me a popular person, but that's, one of the things, we have to do and as we move forward. So, that's about it. So I will open it up to questions. Anybody? Counselor Swope?
On the vocational skills that
Yes.
you had, I noticed it had gone up, and I think we're paying for a new school. Is that correct?
Correct.
Talk a little bit about that.
Sure. The Northeast VOTEC is, building a new building. Anybody that's been up to Wakefield can see it, up on the hill there. It's going to be a great building, but every town that can, is in that pool has to pay. We started with a higher number. We were up a little over 400,000. That number has since dropped. I think we even got a lower number than we thought.
Just got a lower number,
Yeah.
It's like 286 or something like that.
What's that? I'm sorry.
It's like 286.
Yeah, 286 this year, yeah. We're going to settle out a little higher than that, I think, but one of the things we did is, for those who don't know, we are, our Winthrop Retirement Board, we are 104%, we are, fully funded right now. So being fully funded, that number that we have to pay in has dropped a little bit. The council and, through the council president has decided, that they wanted to use the savings there to pay for that. So the money that we dropped that we have to pay to the Winthrop Retirement Board has been paying for that increase for the next 20 years, say, that we have to pay for the Northeast VOTEC. However, keep this in mind, as the school will be done in, a year and a half or 2 years, and then we'll be paying for it for 20, but, with that increase in the school volume comes increase of potential for students. So, that they're gonna have an extra 25% students, so we'll have the ability to send 25% more, so those numbers will go up, and that'll be a challenge to, look to fund that as we move forward as well. Because those costs for the student costs, minimal increase this year, went up a little bit, but those will increase over the years as, we get out 5-10 years from now. All right. Mr. Schmidt?
Yep. So, your expectation is you're going to be passing a budget by June 17th, I think is the date of the second.
Second council meeting, yes.
The town, which is due to vote on compliance with 3A by mid-July, is there any situation where if the town is not in compliance, any of the funding sources in the budget for next fiscal year could be affected?
I don't, some grants maybe, that's, right now, we don't think so, because we're in full compliance until July 14th, so I don't think, I'm guessing the state did that on purpose, gets us through the budget cycle. I don't think there'll be any clawback. It's gonna certainly impact anything we do moving forward, if we're not in compliance. We have our MVP applications in, the same ones we applied for last year, for Morton and Banks and Fisherman's Bend and a few things like that. We'll see how successful we are, but more to follow on that. I don't know what the impact's going to be. I know even the TIP program, they're really holding the line on the 25% design. Like, we got through Mass DOT approval process, but now to get on the TIP list, we need to have 25% design done on the next phase that we're looking at, Main Street from, Belle Isle Marsh to, Maggie's Corner back there. So I don't, they're looking to change those rules. If you're not 3A compliant, obviously the communities that are 3A compliant want less competition, right? So they're pushing to maybe change those rules and, either kick them out completely or deduct points. So they're still talking about how that's gonna play out. They just, as we heard earlier, they just passed the regulations. They didn't change much from what they were before. We didn't anticipate they would. We certainly made a push to try to change them, but that didn't happen. So, we'll see what happens with that, but more to follow. I don't know how that's going to play out, and I certainly don't know, what the council vote will be moving forward, so. You're welcome. Anybody else? Mr. Dadarian?
As you know, I'm on the Climate Commission.
Yes.
because You put me there.
Yes.
And so I wonder if you would like to discuss some of the things that you anticipate into the future, which is, of course, not predictable, but that we might need to consider as things change.
Well, it's coastal flooding is our biggest, right? I mean, we're a peninsula, we're surrounded by water. We've all seen it, thankfully, knock on wood, whatever. We haven't had anything too bad recently, but, we all remember that storm leading up to Christmas last year. A year ago, that was the two chiefs and I driving around in the high water vehicle. We're certainly prone to flooding. Morton and Banks is an issue. Director Cal and I have certainly talked about it many times at council meetings. We're trying to get that addressed with some stormwater fixes, some flapper valves, but, there's an expense that comes along with that. Trying to get the engineering done so then we can, try to get the construction money. Same thing with the stormwater issues we have at Towson and Girdlestone. Those are the areas where it's just antiquated, small pipes, can't handle the volume anymore. We equate it to dumping a 5-gallon bucket in your kitchen sink, right? The water just takes a while to go down, and that's what's going on there. So we got to get those pipes done. Flooding down by the Elks out of, Point Shirley. We're dealing with, coastal erosion on Euro Beach. I mean, across the board, we've got projects that are in play, and we're going to keep chipping away at them, but, we need to have a plan, and we're going to need partners, whether it's federal or state. Both are challenging right now, right, with the federal government and cutting back on grant funding and things like that. So we'll see what happens, but I promise you, we'll stay on it, and we're going to stay determined, and thank you for the Climate Commission and all their hard work, but, we're going to stay the course. Anyone else? Questions, hopes, dreams? No? All right, well, we'll be doing this again tomorrow night. The finance and the executive office, my office, the town manager's office is up at the Finance Commission, so please, anybody attend. There's going to be a lot of meetings between now and the end of May. Finance Commission is gearing up, and they're going to do all the hard work, so I recommend everybody get there and hear how your money's going to be spent, or proposed to be spent for the next year. Thank you.